What if the thing you need most isn't another productivity hack, but an 8-minute state change you can do standing up? No mat, no stretching into shapes, no trying to empty your mind. Today, you'll hear why slow might be your secret weapon for more energy, less stress, and a nervous system that can actually recover. Welcome back to the Mike Method, the podcast where we decode what it really takes to lead and perform at a high level without burning out in the process. I'm Mike Desjardins. My guest today is Lee Holden, a Qigong master and teacher who spent more than 30 years helping people calm their minds, heal their bodies, and feel vibrantly alive through moving meditation. Lee is also a meditation and Tai Chi expert, a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, and author, and he's made Qigong accessible to tens of thousands of people through Holden's Qigong live and on-demand online classes. Lee's path started with a brutal turning point, a collegiate soccer injury at UC Berkeley that left him unable to walk the next morning. The usual sick care approach didn't solve it until he found a Chinese medicine doctor who combined acupuncture with Qigong. Within days, he felt dramatically better, and it sparked a lifetime mission. Why aren't more people doing this? In this conversation, we unpack what Qigong actually is, why Lee calls it the mother of Tai Chi, and why so many of us struggle with traditional meditation, but can find calm fast through mindfulness in motion. We talk about hustle culture, why so many high performers are wired and tired, how Qigong trains you to shift out of chronic fight or flight, what Lee calls taking a mini vacation every day. And if you ever felt like you're sprinting a marathon, this one lands. Lee shares a powerful frame for modern life: ready, set, slow, and a different kind of performance entirely, what he calls the art of effortless power. If you want a practice that helps you downshift your nervous system, recover from stress, and build longevity without adding more grind to your life, this episode is for you. Here's my conversation with Lee Holden. Let's dive in. Lee, I really appreciate you making time to be on the podcast today.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here.
So I was, as I mentioned to you in the warm up before we hit record, I actually went onto your website and found your YouTube channel, and I did one of your recent Qigong 8-minute standing meditations, as I thought that would be the perfect way to set myself up and really come into the present moment, coming into our conversation. And one of the things as I was doing the practice, I was thinking about is, wow, this reminds me a lot of Tai Chi. And I think people in general, most people, possibly listeners, might have heard of Tai Chi before, but not everyone has heard of Qigong. And so if you wouldn't mind, as like a starting point, let's talk about what the difference is or how they connect together. And then, let's just start there. And then I have a bunch of things I want to talk about.
That's great. Tai Chi is an offshoot of Qigong. Sometimes I say that Qigong is the mother of Tai Chi. It springs forth from this ancient practice. Tai Chi is around 800 to 1,000 years old, and Qigong is about 4,000 years old. That's just the written records. And it comes from shamanistic practices. Qigong originated by men and women in ancient times looking at nature and finding harmony and communion with nature. So they'd watch the way the river flows and saying, wow, the river is very powerful. What if I move my body like that? And so Tai Chi and Qigong are almost synonymous. Most people practice Tai Chi. They think they're practicing Tai Chi, but they're actually doing Qigong.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's Tai Chi, the difference is that Tai Chi was originally a martial arts practice.
Oh, okay.
It was used for self-defense. And some of the ancient Tai Chi masters were amazing martial artists, and they would go around China and challenge people with this internal martial art, build their chi, build their internal power, and they were almost invincible. And that's why Tai Chi became so popular. The emperor at the time almost mandated that all the royal guard practice Tai Chi. And the Tai Chi masters, they took out some key Qigong principles that gave him that power. So now it became more of a form, like a kata, a sequence of movements that you memorize, but the internal secret energetic arts of Qigong were sort of taken out because they didn't want to give that to the government, basically. And so there's a whole interesting history, kind of like you've seen in the movies with this secret power, and that's the Qigong. And there's 3 styles of Qigong that we can really tap into. One is medical Qigong, which is the form I mainly teach, which is about health and healing and prevention. Or I have neck pain. What do I do? I have digestive issues. What do I do? And so I have all these condition specific routines that help people to do a practice that guides that healing energy where they need it to go. And so I love it for that reason.
And now your entrance into this practice was actually as a result of a medical an injury that you sustained. Would you mind sharing that story?
Yeah, I was a collegiate soccer player, and I'll never forget it. I was jumping in the air. Somebody took out my legs, and I landed on my tailbone and shot this electric shock up my spine. And even I was like, oh, that's what people mean when they see Tweety birds in their mind when they get hit. And, I continued to play, and it was really the next morning where I stepped out of bed and I couldn't walk. I just fell on the floor. And I went to the team doctor, and they gave me some cortisone and they gave me some painkillers. And it really didn't do much for the pain. It gave me a stomach ache, though. And so there I was, just hobbling around campus, feeling very depressed and sorry for myself because I had finally made it onto the team. I was traveling with the team, playing with the team, and now I had this injury, and felt like all my dreams were crushed in a single moment. But as a kid, I trained in martial arts. And I remember one of the martial artists talking about Qi. In fact, he broke like a big stack of bricks. And as a young 10-year-old, I was like, wow, how did you do that? And I want to do that.
Yeah.
And he's like, the power of Qi. But he told me, hey, Qi is not for hurting people, it's for healing. And it stuck in my mind. So I went back to my hometown and I said, I'm going to find that guy and see if he has some healing techniques for me. And he did. We did some acupuncture. He showed me some pressure points, and he showed me all these Qigong exercises. And I felt better after the first treatment. And by the third or fourth treatment, I was like 90% better and able to go back and play. And my lingering question was, why aren't more people doing this? And so I found a master when I was studying at UC Berkeley through a random sequence of events, and spent a lot of time in Asia and training in these mystical arts, and then saying, how do I share this with my soccer player friends who are all now working in Silicon Valley, all stressed out?
I was thinking about the 4,000 year history of Qigong, and I was thinking about, like, from an analogous perspective, bread's been around thousands of years as well. And we're still making it. People are still eating it. Maybe it's gluten-free now, but it's still around. And so I think there's something about a practice that has withstood the test of time. And it made me think about bread making. It's a practice that has been around and is still alive and well today. And, that one's more mainstream. We accept it. We think about it. It's in all of our stores. And it's interesting to see that, Qigong and Tai Chi that are ancient practices along with meditation, are, meditation kind of made the comeback, or it started to come around in the mindfulness era, probably in the 2014. I think it was July 2014 when Time magazine put meditation and mindfulness and a lady in a lotus pose on the front of the cover of Time. And I'm like, oh, okay. I guess it's gonna get, yeah, it's arrived. And, Eckhart Tolle had written a couple of books and been on Oprah, and they did their whole thing. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's starting to actually hit society. I think that, there's been a lot of work now done around nervous system regulation and the practices and, science's understanding of our nervous system. And there's a whole connection between the science of the nervous system and Qigong. And I almost wonder, like, I want to know your perspective on that connection. And my actual question is, like, if it hadn't been around for 4,000 years and scientists discovered it today, and like, hey, we found these movement patterns and these breathing patterns that actually help us regulate our nervous system, bring us into the present moment, and really ground us, what would they have called it?
Yeah, right. I love that.
Yeah.
And this is a question that I've thought about, because my business, Holden Qigong is like, nobody knows about it. So people kept telling me, you should call it something different. You should call it energy fitness, or, something like that. Um, and I just was like, I'm going to keep to the roots of this practice, even though I'm doing it in a very modern and accessible way. I'm going to keep to the original name because it speaks to the power of the practice. Now, I don't know if you know this, but even today, Qigong is the most widely practiced form of exercise in the world.
Oh,
Some
no, didn't know
30
that.
to 50 million people practice it daily.
Wow. Okay.
And so it just hasn't hit the popularity metric in the Western world, maybe like
Okay.
yoga did.
Yeah.
But I feel like, Qigong is maybe like 20 years behind yoga, and that hopefully it will hit and go big because I think it just has so much to offer modern folks. I would say it's a little more accessible than yoga because you don't have to, change your clothes, get a yoga mat, stand on your head, do
Mhm.
anything crazy, but it delivers some incredible benefits.
Hmm.
We don't always have time to go to the gym, do mindfulness meditation and a yoga class each and every day.
Right.
But Qigong is sort of a synergy and a blending together in a very interesting recipe of energetics. Mindfulness and breath work and yoga all do something really amazing for the mind body system and the nervous system. And Qigong is a fusion of all of that. And it's sort of the oldest practice. Um, and so I think there's something, like you said, there's something to be said. It would not be around if it wasn't extremely beneficial. And I don't know if you know this, but the roots of this practice come from medicine. It was the first recorded time where people were saying, if you exercise, you will be healthier.
Hmm.
And so in Chinese medicine, there's 5 branches of the medicine, and it's all based on prevention.
Hmm.
And so those 5 branches are Qigong, as we were talking about, and that's the thing that you do for yourself. So it is one of the most empowering branches of medicine. What can I do for myself to keep myself healthy? The other branches are acupuncture and herbal medicine, which in Chinese medicine, the herbal medicine was extensive and even a foundation to even pharmaceuticals and everything else. So we had acupuncture, herbal medicine, nutrition, and massage therapy. And if you saw a practitioner or let's say your healthcare providers as a team, you would pay them as long as you were healthy. And as soon as you got sick, you stopped paying
Oh,
because it was healthcare,
right.
not sick care.
Sick care. Yeah.
And this always blows my mind because if we had a system like that, we wouldn't have the myriad of problems that we do today because where you focus, where you put your energy or where you put your mind, energy goes. And so we put so much attention on sickness, and we do have an amazing sick care model and emergency medicine. But if you want to stay healthy, if you want to have high levels of energy and deep vitality, Western medicine doesn't have the answers. You
Hmm.
have to look to these ancient cultures where the model was on vitality.
Hmm.
And really, Qi, as in Qigong or even Tai Chi, means life force energy. There's a force that keeps you alive. I was talking to a Western doctor, and he was like, "You know what? We just have 2 different paradigms. I don't believe in Qi." And I was like, "Well, do you believe that there's something that keeps you alive in your body? And like, what is that?" And well, he's like, "Well, that's a mystery." So I was like, "Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Where does the heartbeat start?
Yeah.
How does your consciousness work? How does the nervous system work to, kind of come back to your question?" And as we look deep enough, we're going to run into that mystery. We don't know where life comes from. So the word chi just simply points to life force energy. And
Mm.
even though it can't be defined, it can be worked with. We
Right.
know that if we are less stressed, we're going to be healthier. We know that if we move our bodies in different ways, that we're going to be healthier and live longer. So Qigong was the ancient practice of health span and lifespan. That's why the saying of Qigong, add not only years to your life, but life to your years,
Mm.
was part of this preventative medicine. So it was deeply looking into health, vitality, and longevity as a medical practice, but also a spiritual practice, because Qigong, being that it's energetically based, doesn't exclude anything. It doesn't exclude your spiritual energy, your sexual energy, your health energy. All of it is combined. And I think really that's where Western medicine and Western thought is really led us astray because we're always looking for specialists. Oh, you have an emotional thing, go see your psychologist. You have body issue, go to the doctor. Then the doctor's going to send you to a specialist, maybe an eye doctor, but that eye doctor's not going to be saying, hey, what's going on emotionally? What are you not seeing in your life? Where's the connections? So energy medicine is always about relationships, about the mind, body, spirit relationship. What's your relationship between your internal energy and your external energy? How satisfied are you with your work, with your home life, with this? And it'll tie back to whatever's going on physiologically. So we always look for the root cause. And so you might start doing a Qigong practice because you have digestive issues, but all of a sudden your neck pain is better and you're sleeping better and you have more energy because there's a cascade of positive side effects when you do a practice like this. So I don't know what I would call it, actually. I think it would be something around energy work.
Yeah.
And, it's mindfulness and motion. One of the things that we call Qigong is the art of effortless power. Maybe
the art of effortless power. Ooh, I like that.
Do we find something? Okay,
I feel like we could. That's a book. Like that's the title of the book, right? So, yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, that's powerful.
You heard it here, folks.
First time, right?
That's it.
Yeah, I like that because I think it's easy for the art of effortless power. It would be something easy to explain to somebody if they were to ask what it was and why would you want to do it. Because I think, we're living in this at least as TikTok and Instagram tells us, and YouTube, we're living in this hustle culture, which is go, go, go all the time. David Goggins is our patron saint. And I think, Alex Hormozy and, I was listening to Chris Williamson was in Vancouver last week and went to see him speak. And he's like, I think we need the antithesis of David Goggins, like the anti-hustle. Somebody who comes out and says, I can relax harder than you can. I'm more relaxed than you, right? Whereas David Goggins is like the out hustle. There needs to be somebody who owns the space of the opposite of that. Like I can relax better than you, because
I love that.
Most of us that are in that kind of hustle culture, who are driven, ambitious people, we don't need more motivation. We don't need more things driving us to work harder. We need more of the, that if that's type A, we need more of the type B in our lives to help to balance us out. And I would say that the hustle culture is not the art of effortless performance. It's the art of hustle and grind performance. And I kind of think about that's kind of like sprinting a marathon. And
you're going to fall short.
It's a terrible idea, right?
Yeah. Right.
And I don't care how fast you are. It's a bad idea. Whereas I think there's sprint and rest, or you could set yourself up for a marathon pace, and those things are great ideas. Sure. And so I wonder if, that Qigong becoming that art of effortless performance is the way of people recognizing that there's a different way to achieve our goals in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just came out with a book, and you are going to like the title, I think. It's called Ready, Set, Flow. Ready, Set, Flow.
Ready, Set, Flow. I love that.
Slow
down. Ready, set, slow.
Slow, yes. And basically, because in Qigong, in the flow section of the practice. Yeah. So a workout will go through exercise, strength, conditioning, then into stretches, then to energy activation, and then into flows, which are moving meditations. Okay. It's like mindfulness in motion. Right. And so if people have a hard time sitting down and meditating, quieting their mind, you put these different patterns of slow, graceful movements into motion, and it becomes a meditation. And it's a way to cultivate deep, powerful energy. And I feel like those slow flows are where the magic happens. And where the effortless ease is. Why does this work? We come back to nature. Nature always works with effortless ease. And most things in life, we forget this, most things in life you don't have to do. And that is why when you're grinding and when you're efforting, you're going against the natural flow of life.
Right.
Because, look at the waves in the ocean. They just come in abundance, and the wind through the trees and the river flowing down the mountain. At the top of the mountain, if the river was like, oh my God, I'm never going to make it, I'm going to really have to try to get around those rocks, and wow, it's such a far way, it would be a neurotic river.
Mm-hmm.
It just flows effortlessly around the rocks and through the branches and makes its path in an effortless way. When you run your fingers through water, it's very soft, but stand in a current and it's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And so Qigong mirrors the movements of water. That's why we do them slowly with relaxation. And when you look at what people are seeking, why are we grinding? Why are we hustling? We're hustling so that at some point at the end, we can relax and we can go slow and we can unwind. The reason it doesn't work is because you haven't trained your nervous system to be actually able to relax. So that when you retire, people are more stressed out than ever because there's something missing. I don't know what to do because I'm constantly in this chronic fight or flight stress mode, which is the sympathetic branch of the nervous system. And I don't know how to get into that parasympathetic. And parasympathetic is when healing happens. It's when you feel like you're actually on vacation, where you feel like you can actually relax. And the way we're designed is that we should go into short bursts of sympathetic and mainly be in parasympathetic. And what Qigong allows you to do is to take a mini vacation every day and get into that parasympathetic state where your body can recuperate, regenerate, activate that inner healing power. And you feel like, now I feel good. And when you finish a Qigong class, it might be the best feeling that you can experience. For me, it's even better than, a workout. And I love exercise. I love mountain biking and stand-up paddleboarding and playing beach volleyball and doing all those things. Absolutely love it. But to get into a state, an inner state where you just feel like, yes, this is how I want to feel, I don't think there's anything better than a Qigong practice.
Well, I think for people that are listening that have tried meditation, like traditional meditation practices, may have had an experience similar to mine, where when I started, I had monkey mind, where my brain was going and firing 100 miles an hour. And I'm like, okay, I suck at this. I'm not doing this right. And, I persevered. But I can say that like 17 years later, that this morning I was meditating, and I would say I was probably calm of the 40 minutes for like 5 minutes, because I had so much going on in my brain, and it was processing so much that I just could not settle my mind down. And, a friend of mine wrote a book called I Cheat at Meditation. And one of the things she says in it is, meditation is not the goal of meditation is not to get better at meditation. The goal of meditation is to get better at life. So I cut myself some slack with that. But what I noticed when I was doing the Qigong video that you have on your YouTube channel, getting ready for the podcast, is that the act of the movement in the standing poses and the flow allowed me to actually quiet my mind. Where I had just, as I mentioned to you, I had just come off, 4 or 5 different tasks that I had to work on this morning. Reviewing documents and a bunch of stuff. And it was heady work and, intellectually taxing. And I needed a state break. And if I tried to meditate, I can guarantee you, again, what would have happened is I would have been thinking about RFPs and documents and, a bunch of other things. But instead, I was actually present, and it was 8 minutes. But I finished it, and I felt like, okay, I've shed the last, couple of hours of, one high intense exercise. I was at CrossFit this morning, and then I spent, I got home, I got ready, and then I had 3 different major things I had to work on. So both mind and body were amped up. Pre-podcast. And I'm like, this isn't the energy I really want to bring into this podcast. So I was grateful to have a practice that I had never done before until I tried your video, to get myself really grounded and ready for our conversation.
That's awesome. Yeah. And it's surprising how in a short amount of time, under 10 minutes, you can get a really great, and I love what you said, state change. And that's what I think people are looking for. We're in a certain state, emotional state, a certain mind state, and we try to wrestle our way out of a mental state of being stressed or anxious or worried with more thinking,
Mm-hmm.
or with something external, when really to discharge that stress through the nervous system through a body practice is the most effective way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned this in studying Western psychology, because not only was I a soccer player in college, I was studying psychology. And about 3 years into studying psychology, I was like, somebody was like, what do I do with all this stress? And I was like, I don't know. I haven't learned anything in
Yeah.
3 years. I've learned a bunch of like diagnosis. I learned a bunch of statistics. I've learned how to do analysis, but I've never learned any technique to make somebody feel better until I started studying Qigong and Eastern medicine, because to move the energy is to shift our state. And I think people forget that when what is an emotion, and it's a particular state, it's a particular vibration, because emotions are energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's, often we say energy in motion,
Right.
emotions. It's something movement. When energy moves, we feel it. That's why I call emotions feelings. And there's ways to work with those emotions to change the state and to empower ourselves to go, well, here's where I am now on the map, the emotional map, and here's where I want to go. Because nobody wakes up in the morning saying, you know what, today I'd like to feel stressed out, anxious, depressed, low energy, and fatigue. But too frequent in a Western way of moving through the world, that is the result
Yeah.
of always externally being focused on what's out there without tending to our energy system. In fact, we spend more time looking at our finances than our own internal energy. And I tell you, energy is way more valuable than money. And we spend more time, looking at a screen than we do our own consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that these modern things are bad. It's just that we're now become imbalanced, and
Right.
we haven't gotten to know the power and the potential that's within us, that if we can tap into that, we are going to be healthier, happier, more fulfilled people.
I think this movement principle, when we think about where exercise sits today and kind of like the Peloton, CrossFit, High Rocks, which is like the HIIT world, basically high intensity interval training, that type of training is very taxing on the nervous system, which is fine. Like it helps, it has a purpose. It's very efficient from an exercise perspective, but it taxes the nervous system and it fires it up. And so those types of movement practices are, if you're in a really stressed out state and your body is firing out adrenaline and cortisol, that's activating that system even more. And I think that when people think, oh, I exercise and I'm stressed out, it's like, yeah, but the type of exercise you're doing is actually quite stressful on your body and is actually taxing your nervous system even further. Mm-hmm. So the type of movement that you need to do, as you're describing in Qigong, is the slow movement of moving the body so that the body knows that it's okay and it's safe, that you have a breathing practice to go along with it, so that you've got your vagus nerve is getting some stimulation at the same time. Yeah. But you're doing something that's actually allowing your nervous system to downregulate and get into that, as you say, that parasympathetic space. A recent guest was actually just saying, there's sympathetic, there's parasympathetic, and then there's this ventral state in between, where we're usually kind of sitting in that ventral state where we're not in like absolute bliss, calmness all the time, but we're kind of in this medium state, where we can drop into calm when we need to. We want to float mostly in ventral, and it's important to be able to go up into that sympathetic. If we're driving and somebody jumps out onto the road, we do need to swerve. We should have a quick reaction. It should, fire up our nervous system quickly. It's the ability to come back to that kind of ventral state, and not live in fight or flight, like not live in that sympathetic state, where that's kind of what hustle culture is like. Yeah, live in that go, go, go sympathetic state, because you'll be so productive. but it's kind of like slamming your foot on the accelerator and then hoping your car doesn't break down, but never taking your foot off the gas. Like,
Right, exactly. No, I love that analogy. I mean, because sometimes I call Qigong less stress, more energy.
right.
And when you think about energy and Qi, it's delineated into many different kinds because you don't always want cup of coffee energy.
Right.
At night, you want to slow down and relax and be able to sleep well. And unfortunately, we're in a culture of being wired and tired.
Yeah.
And so when you are stressed out at work and then you come home and you do a HIIT workout, that's more sympathetic. You're actually burning out your energy reserves. And so yin and yang is like the oil in the lamp and the fire in the lamp. So it's an ancient metaphor. So the
Yeah.
oil is the yin.
Yeah.
And if you burn out your yin energy, you keep turning up that fire. All of a sudden you're like, now I have burnout. Now I have adrenal fatigue. Now I'm not happy. And you just fried your nervous system in the intention of getting healthy. And it's funny that, things like slow movements and relaxation and stress management are all going to move the needle more in lifespan than almost anything else. And so I think it's really good to find that balance. There's nothing wrong, like you said, with those incredible workouts and exercise science, but to have those, what do they say in exercise physiology? You have to have those rest days.
Mm-hmm.
And those rest days shouldn't be just sit on the couch
Mm-hmm.
doing nothing. They should be relaxing, but movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so those replenishing type of activities like doing Qigong or, being out in nature, going for a slow walk, all those things are so beneficial. The other thing that I find so interesting in Western science, there was a book called Move Your DNA. And I was talking about telomeres and these markers of longevity. And the more variety of movement you have, the better. So yes, it's good to go do your run or your hill training or your whatever it is. But if you have variety in your movement, it's the best.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about Qigong practice is that there's such variety. There's stretches, there's conditioning, there's energy activation, and there's flow. So you get this well-balanced, nutritious movement meal all in that one practice. And so I have people that are, big athletes, but they use Qigong as recovery days. They use it as warm-ups. They use it as cool down. So it can integrate really well with lots of different things. And then there's the people that say, you know what? Qigong is my exercise and that's what I do. And you're going to get a wonderful health and longevity workout in that one practice.
I think this concept of changing up motion is so important because, anybody who hasn't gone for a run in a long time and goes for a run, the next day is like, oh, this hurts and that hurts. And if somebody hasn't biked in a while and then they do a big bike ride and then the next day they're like, oh man, I was sore. I'm sore, right? Or they're like, I went and played beach volleyball or soccer with my kid and I haven't done that in ages. And they wake up the next day and they're like, oh, and it's because whatever they're doing usually for exercise is very, it's the same. It's basically the same thing all the time. And so they're not really setting themselves up for life. They're setting themselves up for that activity. Like, for instance, like I'm a good runner is a thing, right? Like I cycle and I'm good at cycling. It's like, cool. But that doesn't actually, maybe the cardio absolutely translates over. But as we get older, things like strength, mobility, and flexibility matter way more than cardio in terms of our long-term lifespan. And as you said earlier, like the quality of those years, right? Like the quality of the life that you live is not really determined by your cardiovascular system. If you're exercising and you're building strength and you're dealing with your flexibility and mobility, and you've got a great practice for downregulating your nervous system that has motion to it, as Qigong does, then you're going to be far ahead of somebody who has massive aerobic capacity, but doesn't have those other things.
Yeah, no, it's such a good point. I mean, just kind of flash back to a teacher of mine in China, and she was 106 years old, taught classes every day in the park, moved like a spry cat.
Yeah.
And it was just like, wow.
Like how, right? How?
Right? She taught Qigong, and she taught a very specific style of Qigong called swimming dragon.
Okay.
Which is one of my favorite styles of Qigong. And, I do it she said, hey, 20 minutes of this, and she guaranteed you live to 100. And I was like, okay, I guess if you go find her in the afterlife and say, hey, the guarantee didn't work, but she was amazing. She
Yeah.
was incredible. I could not believe she was that old and moving the way she did. And I found that over and over again, that older people in lots of different cultures, but in Chinese culture, often were revered. They were the wise ones. They knew how to move. They were sought after for counsel. And that difference in the perception of longevity and aging made a huge difference for quality of life in the elderly. And so, places like Singapore and, Japan, you'll see people living very long and healthy lives. And it's because of these type of practices. Movement is one part of living a long life. Of course, nutrition and social connections and all of those things, they all play a factor. But to really dial in your movement practice in a simple and accessible way often really feels good. And then when you manage your stress, because stress is the root cause of so many illnesses. And the studies around stress and health is astonishing. And I don't know if people really realize that their emotional stress causes like 90% of why we go to the doctor for a problem. It's I think the statistic was at 89%. So like pushing 90%, and whether it's a headache, digestive issues, pain, it's all rooted in stress. And if you can manage that stress, you're going to eliminate 90%. I mean, that would be the best pharmaceutical ever created. And so if you change your breathing, if you change and discharge stress, and you do that on a regular basis, you are doing preventative medicine.
I was playing pickleball with a woman in there was a foursome. She was on the other side in Whistler this summer, and she was very good. And we played the game, and she was like a bloody sniper. She kept hitting the ball, and I said, like, how long have you been playing pickleball? And she's like, well, I used to play tennis. She's like, I was one of the original members at the Whistler Racket Club, which I think is at least 45 years old. So,
Nice.
So I'm like, okay. So I'm starting to do the math in my head. And she's like, yeah, I used to ski and I used to play tennis, but now I just play pickleball and I try to play every day. And I said, oh, does your husband play? No, he's actually in a care home now. He just had his 95th birthday. And I said, wait,
what?
How old are you? She's 90.
Oh my gosh.
She's good. Like,
yeah, you're getting smoked by a 90-year-old. You're like, I was like
dialing it back at first, and I'm like, I can't. She's killing me out here. I turned to my partner, this guy from Florida. His name is Tom, and I said, Tom, we have to up our game, man. Like these two women, the other one was 80 and 90, and they were smoking us. I'm like, we really got to step it up. And I said to her after, I said, this has been the most, like, one, that was a ton of fun. Two, you're very good and very accurate at pickleball. But I said, it's also very inspiring for me to see that you're here every day playing, moving your body, having a great time. Like, you've got all these friends at the club here. She walks there and back from her place in Whistler. And I saw the secret. Like, I saw right what you said there. It's like, keep moving, whatever it is, like find something you love and just keep moving, because the body does not do well at rest. No, what I shouldn't say at rest. The body is well at rest. The body does not do well with no movement practice, would be a better way of saying it.
Yeah. Well, you just could cite that article, "Sitting is the New Smoking."
Yeah.
If you sit too long, it's every bit as detrimental to your health. And we understand this by looking at energy and energy practices, because we say if you don't move, you create stagnant chi.
Right.
And you don't want just like water, you don't want stagnant water. You want water that moves, is healthy.
Yeah.
That's the water you want to drink. You don't want to drink out of a stagnant swamp. And unfortunately, if we don't move, and if you don't move all the joints and the hinges, they're going to get rusty.
Right.
So you might do one kind of movement and get the benefit, but a lot of the other parts of the body suffer. Right. And joint health is big as we get older.
Yeah.
All you have to do is not move your shoulder for 2 weeks. Even a very healthy shoulder will start to freeze up in just a short amount of time. Mm-hmm. And so all your joints are that way. How often do we rotate our spine side to side, or open the spine up and down or move side to side, not often enough, because, as we get older, we just find more habituated ways of moving and
Right.
doing the same things over. And then as things start to get stiff, we shy away from doing movements that showcase that stiffness. And so if you want to get rid of the stiffness, you got to oil the joints. How do you oil the joints? You move in certain ways. And that's kind of the magic of this type of practice.
So for listeners who are hearing this right now and saying, okay, guys, you got me. I'm convinced. Okay. Yeah. I've heard it. Makes sense to me. There's a ton of scientific evidence out there. There's just, there's so many practitioners been doing this for 4,000 years. Okay. I'm in. How do you even get started? If you're listening here and you're like, I want to do it right now. I want to try this. I want to get where do people start?
Oh, that's great, Mike. Come to my website. I got so many resources and so many different, I have 48 workshops on different titles. And these are like 3 hours long. So you can find a condition that you want to address. Or I have like a video class subscription where you just come to class and I teach 3 times a week on Zoom. If you don't make it, it's sitting right there on the website. So there's classes that are ongoing. There's condition specific things. I have my video series that was on public television up there. And then I have courses for people who want to really go deep and go into breath work and Qigong and, become a teacher in Qigong. So Holden Qigong is the website to come check it out. And the hardest part about the practice, Mike, is how to spell it. So Qigong.
So Holden, tell you what. So it's Qigong. And what we're going to do is we'll drop the link to your website into the show notes. We'll also put a link to your new book so that people can go check that out. So if you're madly trying to write down the URL, don't worry, it's right in the show notes, whatever platform you're on. So you can easily go and check that out. And yeah, having done one of your programs before we got started, I can genuinely say this works and it's fantastic. Lee, I really appreciate you making time to be on the podcast today. This has been fantastic. Your story of how you got into Qigong and Tai Chi from, a soccer injury to helping really change your life, to deciding that you wanted more people to see the benefits of something that you didn't even really know about before you had a catastrophic injury that led you down this path. So I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing your story. And yeah, it's just been a pleasure, man.
Thank you so much, Mike. Great interview. And it was a delight to be here.